So in centering ourselves for today's fabulous intake, I know there is only one time, and that time is now, and now, and now. It's always only one time. And in this now moment, I know only joy and welcome and curiosity for what's in the next now moment. And I also know I am one of that now. I am one of that creation experience that is what it all is. We call it God or Spirit or Source, whatever word you need to name that energy that is what we are, that is what we were, if you can say were when it's all now. The beginning, the middle, and the end of now is all one thing. And it's all one thing. Even God is all one thing, and we are one of that one thing. So I set my intention to know the one thing in my life is love. And in that love I am grateful, and in that love I am full of prosperity, and in that love I am full of wisdom, and I am full of it all. We all are. Full of joy. The colors of joy are many, and in these days when it feels heavy and dark at times, it is I don't want to call it work, my joy, to look at the colors of life and the colors of good, and to call those forth as I set my intention for the next now and the next now, being good things, having good, greater, better. Oh, what's that word? Fabulous. You guys are learning. Y'all are fabulous. Because fabulous is what we call, and so fabulous is what comes. I am grateful for this today. For those who are here now, and those who are here now in the virtual world, whatever now it is, it's all good. It's all God. And so it is.
So moving into June, we changed themes, of course, and so our theme this month is called The Lightness of Being Incredible. And in case you don't know who that's about you. You're incredible. Again, nudge your neighbor. You're incredible. So during June, we celebrate a bunch of stuff. It's Pride Month. We celebrate Juneteenth in the middle of the month. Pentecost, where the Holy Spirit comes upon the disciples. It's the beginning of summer, and it's the Islamic New Year. All of that happens in this month. Oh yeah, and there's Father's Day. I forget, you know. That's called the beginning of summer. Yeah. So it's all an invitation to live full out, to live fully out in our lives, and to explore what that means for each of us. Almost all of us have been closeted in some way in our lives, you know. And so it's time to celebrate the incredibleness that we are, to come out of the closet, whatever closet you've found yourself in, and play with that. So today's theme is called In Living Color. And we're going to play with our colorfulness. So if you read the e-news this week, this is a test, you were invited to wear a color that represents some aspect of your highest self. And so those of you who read that and did that, you can participate in the exercise. The rest of you just have to shut up and not say a thing. No, I'm just teasing. But think about, if you missed that, what is a color that represents your highest self? You know, and an aspect of your highest self. So, you know, today I'm wearing turquoise because to me that's a combination of the heart energy and the throat energy. It's a combination of the water and the sky on earth. And I've got the brown shoes for the earthiness of it, and the light color for the white light, which is in the light spectrum, is all colors combined. So kind of, you know, I'm wearing all that together. What? I was intentional in my wear. So I invite you to find somebody nearby you, one or two people, and share with them why you're wearing the color you're wearing today, or if you weren't aware of that, what is a color that does represent your highest self? Just take a couple moments and just check in with somebody nearby you. So take one more minute, we'll bring that to a close. Let's begin to wrap that up. Huh? Yep. So who you are, the colors you bring to life are special and unique. Nobody does it like you. Nobody can replace you. No one else does it quite the same. E. Cummings, one of my favorite poems of his, says, "To be nobody but yourself in a world which is doing its best day and night to make you like everybody else means to fight the hardest battle which any human being can fight and never stop fighting." We are here to be ourselves, to find and discover and express ourselves. By the way, he also had another little line that I loved, which is, "Unbeing dead is not being alive." Not being dead is not the same as as being alive. Not being dead is not the same as being alive. His phrase was unbeing dead, but I think it's more clear with that. So life calls to itself. Life, infinite life, calls to itself. And that call is what we call aliveness. You and I are the embodiment of that. And we are constantly being invited into the dance of aliveness with each other, with the planet, with everything. And we constantly have the choice to be fully, colorfully alive or just unbeing dead. You know, existing in the gray nothingness, neither happy nor sad, neither hot nor cold, existing but not living. We have that choice constantly. We can just put in our time on earth until we get to go to whatever's after this. Yes? I know that's not you. So take a breath. Because we can enjoy and play and enjoy and be in this time and place with joy. We can celebrate the dance of life that's happening within and all around us. Sometimes it's like a lazy summer afternoon. You know, these last few days I've been spending the day in the afternoon in my zero gravity chair underneath the lush green of my pear trees, reading a book, and it's just, so relaxing. And then other days of our lives are winter storms, tornadoes, all that stuff, earthquakes. But it's all life. All of it is capital L life. Mary O'Malley says life is not always likable, but it's always trustworthy. Okay? So we're on a one-time cruise through life as this being in this time and space. You and I are on a cruise ship called our bodies in this ocean. And our engine that powers us is love and joy. So we're invited to have fun and make the most of this cruise. Yes? God. Yes. I was talking to me and you, because we're all the same. Some people spend their time in the gray wasteland. Some of us have gray waistlines too, you know. But gray wasteland of self-pity, criticism, judging, and not really experiencing life. Okay? But I invite us to dance, to play, to float on the river of joy, which takes a constant willingness to let go. Because it's a river, it's in a flow, yes? And so we can't cling to things and say, oh, I don't want to move forward, I'm sticking right here, because that's not where life is, right? Life continuously flows. Even if we don't always like it. I love how Buffy in our opening prayer talked about the next moment. We can approach the next moment with fear, or we can approach the next moment with curiosity and openness. One of them gives us a close, and as we know, consciousness is cause, consciousness is creative, so the consciousness that I bring to the next moment is what it will look like to me. What are the seeds we're planting? In the movie What the Bleep Do We Know, which, by the way, Brent did some of the music for, in case you didn't know that. What's that? And The Secret? Would you keep it a secret, please? Thank you. But in the movie, the What the Bleep Do We Know, there's a little scenario where there's the people of primitive people of an island. The Spanish conquistadors are coming with their clipper ships, and they literally can't see them because they have no mental equivalent of a clipper ship. They have nothing to relate to, and it takes the shaman to notice that there are unusual waves coming to the shore to say there must be something there, and to pierce through until he can see, or she can see, the clipper ships that are there. And so sometimes that's what life is like. We don't see it, but we see the evidence of it. And so we have to go within, we have to go deeper and deeper until we can see what's there. Now, I, by the way, don't know if that's an actual factual story, but I know that we all do that in our lives. That we see what we expect to see. And so how we approach life, is it a joyous dance? Is it a, wow, what's the next moment going to bring? Think of a little kid, including yourself, on a beautiful summer morning when you're out of school, and it's like you wake up in the morning and it's just like, what's next? What are we going to do today? I think of Winnie the Pooh, what's for breakfast? The hobbits could probably do the same thing. So bringing that quality of joy, bringing that quality of curiosity, bringing that quality of expectation of something vibrant and alive, that color. So our inner cruise is powered by love. It's love for ourselves. It's love for others, which is our CSLO vision, is living as love in a world of love. Yes? And so there are scary rapids and eddies and then whirlpools and stuff, times where we get stuck, times where we get scary. And like in the Odyssey, there are sirens that want to call us, hey, listen to your problems, listen to your past, let's get all lost in that for a while. And we try to forget that we are here to live fully and not be lulled to sleep. Rumi talks about the breeze at dawn has secrets to tell you. Don't go back to sleep. You must ask for what you really want. Don't go back to sleep. People are going back and forth across the door sill where the two worlds touch. The door is round and open. Don't go back to sleep. And so this is our invitation, is to stay awake, to stay alive, to stay vibrant in this process. So we're here to discover and express the colors that we are. The flavors, the songs, the dance, the poetry of our existence, however and whoever you are. To be that exuberantly. And then because we exist as a community of all people, of all plants, of all animals, of the whole planet, we are also here to dance, play, and share with each other, everyone and everything. experiencing and enjoying each other's expressions and being open and curious about it. Their colors, their dances, their flavors, their poetry. We're here to play with all that. And some we may resonate with more than others. Have you noticed? Okay? And we can use those differences, those uniquenesses, as a reason to judge, criticize, and separate. That's that gray existence that I talked about. Or as an opportunity to explore something outside of our normal experience. Adding both an appreciation of the songs, dances, and colors of others, and then allowing them to blend in, to interact with our own dance, color, flavor, whatever it is. Deepening the experience of our interconnectedness. Think of a time when you were closed off to something, okay? And you decided to try maybe a food, an experience, a person, and you decided to open up. You allowed yourself to open up to something new, to something, try something new, and became more expanded from that experience. I remember the first time I ever tried escargot. Okay, I was in my early 20s. I was up in Quebec with a friend, and she had ordered a plate. We were in this wonderful Swiss restaurant, which was a whole fondue meal, and but the appetizer was escargot, and she ordered it. I asked, it's kind of like, what is that? And it's like, it's snails. It's really good. It's like, yeah, no, I'm not going to eat that. Unfortunately, that friend knew me really well, and so she looked at me and she goes, "Have you ever actually tried it?" No. But I've already made up my mind I don't like it before I try it, right? How many times do we do that in life? Take a breath. So she forced me to try one, and we ended up ordering a second plate of escargot because I started gobbling down hers. And that opened me up to, from then on I was eating raw cherry stone clams and the half shell. I was living in New England, so that was what was there. And, that's led me into sushi and oysters and expanded my whole food experience, yes? So something that I didn't want to do at first opens me up to something else, something greater. So in order to share, to shine, and to expand our colors, we have to let go of our rigid ways of being, our rigid clinging to ideas of this is the right way. Yeah, I hear that moaning. Where is she? Yep, there she is, back there. And letting that become, this is a way, show me your way. And out of that can arise something new and fresh for all parties. I want to share a story from, our book this month is Elizabeth Gilbert's Big Magic. Most of you know Elizabeth Gilbert for writing Eat, Pray, Love. You may have read the book, you may have seen the movie, but she shares a wonderful story. It's in her last chapter of this book, and this is a book on creativity. It's a very fun book. It's an easy read. I highly recommend it. And the last section is called Divinity. And so she talks about a teacher of hers who was a Balinese shaman who talked about the Balinese sacred dances that they do there. And he explained to me that Balinese dance is one of the world's great art forms. It's exquisite, intricate, and ancient. It is also holy. Dances are ritually performed in temples as they have been for centuries under the purview of priests. The choreography is vigilantly protected and passed from generation to generation. These dances are intended to do nothing less than keep the universe intact. Nobody can claim the Balinese do not take their dancing seriously. Back in the early 1960s, mass tourism reached Bali for the first time. Visiting foreigners immediately became fascinated with the sacred dances. The Balinese are not shy about showing off their art, and they welcome the tourists to enter the temples and watch the dancing. They charged a small sum for this privilege. The tourists paid, and everyone was happy. As touristic interest in this ancient art form increased, however, the temples became overcrowded with spectators. Things got a bit chaotic. Also, the temples were not particularly comfortable, as the tourists had to sit on the floor with spiders and dampness and such. Then some bright Balinese soul had the terrific idea to bring the dancers to the tourists instead of the other way around. Wouldn't it be nicer and more comfortable for the sunburned Australians if they could watch the dances from, say, a resort's swimming pool area, instead of from inside a dank, dark temple? Then the tourists could have a cocktail at the same time and really enjoy the entertainment. and the dancers could make more money because there would be room for bigger audiences. So the Balinese started performing their sacred dances at the resorts in order to better accommodate the paying tourists, and everyone was happy. Actually, not everyone was happy. The more high-minded of the Western visitors were appalled. This was desecration of the sublime. These were sacred dances. This was holy art. You can't just do a sacred dance on the profane property of a beach resort. And for money, no less. It was an abomination. It was spiritual, artistic, and cultural prostitution. It was sacrilege. These high-minded Westerners shared their concerns with the Balinese priests because they couldn't keep their mouth shut. Sorry, that was not in the book. Who listened politely despite the fact that the hard and unforgiving notion of sacrilege does not translate easily into Balinese thinking. Nor are the distinctions between sacred and profane quite so unambiguous as they are in the West. The Balinese priests were not entirely clear as to why the high-minded Westerners viewed the beach resorts as profane at all. Did divinity not abide there as well as anywhere else on earth? Similarly, they were unclear as to why the friendly Australian tourists in their clammy bathing suits should not be allowed to watch sacred dances while drinking Mai Tais. Were these nice-seeming and friendly people undeserving of witnessing beauty? But the high-minded Westerners were clearly upset by this whole turn of events, and the Balinese famously do not like to upset their visitors, so they set out to solve the problem. The priests and masters of the dance all got together and came up with an idea inspired by a marvelous ethic of lightness and trust. They decided that they would make up some new dances that were not sacred. And they would perform only these certified divinity-free dances for the tourists at the resorts.
Are they gluten-free too?
Just as divinity-free. The sacred dances would be returned to the temples and would be reserved for religious ceremonies only. And that is exactly what they did. And they did it easily too, with no drama and no trauma. Adapting gestures and steps from the old sacred dances, they devised what were essentially gibberish dances and commenced performing these nonsense gyrations at the tourist resorts for money. And everyone was happy because the dancers got to dance, the tourists got to be entertained, and the priests earned some money for the temples. Best of all, the high-minded Westerners could now relax because the distinction between the sacred and profane had been safely restored. Everything was in its place, tidy and final, except that it was neither tidy nor final. You may remember our theme from 2 months ago, life is messy. Because nothing is ever really tidy or final. The thing is, over the next few years, these silly new meaningless dances became increasingly refined. The young boys and girls grew into them, and working with a new sense of freedom and innovation, they gradually transformed their performances into something quite magnificent. In fact, the dances were becoming rather transcendent. In another example of what Elizabeth calls an inadvertent seance, which is an inadvertent connecting with the divine, it appeared that those Balinese dancers, despite all their best efforts to be completely unspiritual, were unwittingly calling down big magic from the heavens anyhow, right there by the swimming pool. All they'd originally intended to do was entertain tourists and themselves, but now they were tripping over God every single night, and everyone could see it. It was arguable that the new dances had become even more transcendent than the stale old sacred ones. The Balinese priests, noticing this phenomenon, had a wonderful idea. Why not borrow the new fake dances, bring them into the temples, incorporate them into ancient religious ceremonies, and use them as a form of prayer? In fact, why not replace some of those stale old sacred dances with those new fake dances? So they did. At which point, the meaningless dances became holy dances because the holy dances had become meaningless. And everyone was happy, except for those high-minded Westerners who were now thoroughly confused because they couldn't tell anymore what was holy and what was profane. Isn't that great? When we start letting go of this is the way and open to the possibility of playing something new, we can create something that has never been done before. We blend our colors, our dances with somebody else's. I know you don't like to talk, and so you're leaving. And actually, I think you have a real estate appointment. So some of us have been convinced also that our colors aren't wanted or needed. Anybody feel that way in your life? Yep. Aren't approved by them, whoever them is. But we are at the party of life to be who we are, and we wouldn't be if we weren't needed. See, the infinite consciousness is taking the time, the thought, the energy to be each of us. Yes? I think it's Emerson who says the universe, or I can't remember the exact title that he is, has need of an organ here, has need of somebody to be present as it in this particular place and circumstance. You're that. Nudge your neighbor, say, you're here as God. You're here because God needs you here right now. So at least let it be you. Let it be itself through you and show it a good time. I have a good minister friend, Pat Campbell, who years ago wrote a book called Show God a Good Time. We're God informed. We might as well show it a good time, yes? So no matter where you find yourself or who you are, I'm going to close with one other story here from this same book. And Elizabeth talks about a friend of hers, actually a guy that she met at a party, who told her a story about his younger brother who had wanted to be an artist and had moved to Paris and was hanging out in Paris and taking all the beauty and practicing art and showing his art to anybody he wanted to, getting in conversations with anybody he could. And he says one day little brother, that's their name for him, struck up a conversation in a cafe with a group of charming young people who turned out to be some species of fancy aristocrats. The charming young aristocrats took a liking to little brother and invited him to a party that weekend in a castle in the Loire Valley. They promised little brother that this was going to be the most fabulous party of the year. It would be attended by the rich, by the famous, and by several crowned heads of Europe. Best of all, it was to be a masquerade ball where nobody skimped on the costume. It was not to be missed. Dress up, they said, and join us. Excited, the little brother worked all week on a costume that he was certain would be a showstopper. He went through all this process. He finally shows up at the castle on the day of, gives his name to the butler who's letting him in. Butler recognizes the name, lets him in, and he walks in, upon which he immediately realized his mistake. This was indeed a costume party. His new friends had not misled him there, but he had missed one detail in translation. This was a themed costume party, and the theme was a medieval court. And little brother was dressed as a lobster. All around him, the wealthiest and most beautiful people of Europe were attired in gilded finery and elaborate period gowns, draped in heirloom jewels, sparkling with elegance as they waltzed to a fine orchestra. Little brother, on the other hand, was wearing a red leotard, red tights, red ballet slippers, and giant red foam claws. Also, his face was painted red. This is the part of the story where I must tell you that little brother was over 6 feet tall and quite skinny. And with the long waving antenna on his head, he appeared even taller. And he was also, of course, the only American in the room. He stood at the top of the steps for one long, ghastly moment. He almost ran away in shame. Running away in shame seemed like the most dignified response to the situation. But he didn't run. After all, he'd come this far, and he'd worked tremendously hard to make this costume, and he was proud of it. So he took a deep breath and walked onto the dance floor. He said basically it was his experience as an aspiring artist that gave him the courage and the license to be so vulnerable and absurd. Something in life had already taught him to just put it out there, whatever it is. That costume was what he had made, after all, so that's what he was bringing to the party. It was the best he had. It was all he had. As he moved into the crowd of aristocrats, a silence fell. The dancing stopped. The orchestra stuttered to a stop. The other guests gathered around little brother. Finally, someone asked him what on earth he was. Little brother bowed deeply and announced, "I am the court lobster." And then laughter. Not ridicule, just joy. They loved him. They loved his sweetness, his weirdness, his giant red claws, his skinny ass, and his bright red spandex tights. He was the trickster among them, and so he made the party. Little brother even ended up dancing that night with the Queen of Belgium. So this week, 2 spiritual practices. Number 1, let yourself, capital S self, shine. Let your colors be out there. Ask how can I live more fully in living color? Be playful, be silly, try something different outside your normal. Take a breath. Part 2, notice how you feel about others. Can you let them show their colors without having to make them be like you? So that's our 2 practices this week. Are you willing to play with those? And I mean play. Yes. Wonderful. I want to close with a quote from a religious science practitioner named Tracy Brown, who has written a book called, and I'm going to do the full title of this book because I think it's a great title, Stained Glass Spirit. And the subtitle is Becoming a Spiritual Community Where Oneness Does Not Require Sameness. And she says, ignoring the beauty and value and uniqueness of different types of people is equivalent to ignoring God and refusing to see all the ways God shows up as humanity. We don't do that with dogs, or flowers, or trees, or clouds, or spices, or nature, or art, so why would we do it with humans? Yes, so I invite you this week to let your color shine and to appreciate the colors of those around you shining. Even if their color is deep, dark brown or gray, still appreciate that. How many of us have a little gray spot within us? Yeah? Okay. And do we want to be loved anyway? Yeah. So can we love others anyway? So join me in our affirmation. I celebrate all the colors of my human experience. It's up there. One more time. I celebrate all the colors of my human experience. And so I do, and so it is.